Imagine you're in the air, thousands of feet above the ground, and suddenly the engines go silent, or the landing gear refuses to come down. You're facing a nightmare that no pilot ever wants to experience. But in these moments, a handful of pilots defied the impossible, turning disaster into a miracle. This video will take you through 5 of the most unbelievable plane landings in history, where skill, quick thinking, and a little bit of luck saved hundreds of lives. Get ready to witness the moments that redefined what's possible in the sky. The Gimli Glider. This is the incredible story of Air Canada Flight 143, a routine passenger jet that became an unpowered glider and the crew that landed it safely against all odds. On July 23, 1983, a brand new Boeing 767, one of the most advanced airliners of its time, was on a domestic flight from Montreal to Edmonton. It was a smooth, uneventful journey, carrying 61 passengers and 8 crew members. Little did they know, a critical mistake had been made during refueling. Due to a mix-up with Canada's recent conversion to the metric system, the ground crew mistakenly used pounds instead of kilograms, leaving the aircraft with only about half the fuel it needed. While cruising at 41,000 feet, the plane's cockpit lit up with a series of alarms. First, one engine failed. Then, a few minutes later, the second engine went dead, and the aircraft's entire electrical system shut down. The pilots, Captain Robert Pearson and First Officer Maurice Quintal, were now flying a powerless 75-ton glider. With no engines, they lost all thrust and the ability to generate electricity, which meant they couldn't see their instruments. The pilots, both experienced glider pilots in their spare time, took control. They calculated the descent rate and determined they could glide to a nearby military airfield. However, as they got closer, they realized the airfield was no longer in use. It had been converted into a public drag racing strip, and there were people on the runway. The pilots quickly made a series of desperate maneuvers to slow the plane and land it safely. They used a side-slip maneuver normally used for small planes to scrub off speed and altitude without power. With no landing gear power, the crew had to deploy the main gear manually. It locked into place, but the nose gear did not. The plane touched down hard, with its tail scraping the ground and the nose bouncing violently before finally settling. The pilots successfully landed the giant jet on the drag strip, with the nose scraping along the tarmac. No one was seriously injured, and the passengers were evacuated using the emergency slides. The plane was later repaired and put back into service. This impossible feat became known as the Gimli Glider, a true testament to the skill and ingenuity of the pilots. The Ural Airlines Cornfield Miracle. This is the astounding tale of Ural Airlines Flight 178, a passenger jet that defied disaster through the quick thinking of its crew. On August 15, 2019, Ural Airlines Flight 178, an Airbus A321, was departing from Zhukovsky International Airport near Moscow, Russia. It was a routine morning flight, carrying 226 passengers and 7 crew members bound for Simferopol, Crimea. Seconds after liftoff, as the aircraft climbed, it flew directly into a massive flock of gulls. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. Both engines ingested birds, leading to simultaneous engine failure. Alarms blared in the cockpit as the plane rapidly lost thrust. The aircraft was barely airborne, now essentially a 75-ton glider with fully loaded fuel tanks and no power. With incredible composure, Captain Damir Yusupov and First Officer Georgy Mirzin took immediate action. They identified a large cornfield directly ahead. With no engine power, no time to dump fuel, and rapidly losing altitude, they executed an emergency landing. The Airbus A321 touched down hard in the cornfield, skidding for hundreds of meters. Miraculously, all 233 people on board survived the impact. There were no fatalities, only various injuries, many minor. The evacuation was swift and orderly. This extraordinary event, occurring almost exactly 40 years after the Gimli glider, was quickly dubbed the Miracle on the Cornfield by media worldwide, celebrating the crew's heroic actions. The Heathrow Miracle. This is the incredible story of British Airways Flight 38, a Boeing 777 that made an emergency landing at one of the world's busiest airports, saving everyone on board. On January 17, 2008, British Airways Flight 38 was on its final approach to London's Heathrow Airport, completing a routine flight from Beijing, China. The weather was cold, but everything seemed normal as the pilots prepared for landing. Just 2 miles from the runway and at a critical altitude of only 600 feet, both of the aircraft's powerful Rolls-Royce Trent engines suddenly lost thrust. The plane's speed dropped dramatically and its nose pitched up. The crew, led by Captain Peter Burkle, was faced with a horrifying reality. The aircraft was descending rapidly and had no engine power, making a traditional landing impossible. In a desperate and heroic effort, the pilots had to glide the heavy aircraft toward the runway. They managed to keep the plane from stalling and guided it to the very beginning of the runway. The landing was extremely hard, with the landing gear collapsing and the aircraft skidding to a halt. It was a controlled crash, but the crew's skill ensured the plane didn't break apart. Despite the severe damage to the aircraft, all 152 people on board survived, with only a few minor injuries. The lack of fatalities was a testament to the crew's professionalism and the robust design of the Boeing 777. The investigation later revealed that the cause was fuel icing, which blocked the fuel flow to both engines. This shocking event became known as the Miracle at Heathrow. The Warsaw Gear Up Landing. This is the gripping story of Lot Polish Airlines Flight 16, a Boeing 767 that made a dramatic emergency landing in Warsaw without its landing gear, in an event that became known as the Miracle on the Runway. On November 1, 2011, Lot Flight 16 was completing a transatlantic flight from Newark, New Jersey to Warsaw, Poland. The Boeing 767 had an uneventful journey across the Atlantic, and the crew, led by Captain Tadeusz Wrona, prepared for a routine landing at Warsaw's Chopin Airport. As the plane began its descent, the crew attempted to extend the landing gear. To their shock, a series of warning lights appeared in the cockpit. The complex hydraulic system that lowers the landing gear had failed. Despite repeated attempts, and with the assistance of air traffic control and ground engineers, the pilots couldn't get the gear to deploy. With no other choice, they had to prepare for a perilous belly landing, landing the plane directly on its fuselage. Captain Wrona expertly circled the airport for an hour to burn off excess fuel, a critical safety measure to prevent an explosion on impact. After evacuating the airport and covering the runway with fire-retardant foam, he began his final approach. With no landing gear, the pilots had to touch down perfectly. The plane scraped along the runway on its belly, creating a shower of sparks and a cloud of smoke. The crew and passengers were thrown around as the aircraft came to a grinding halt. Incredibly, all 231 people on board survived without a single serious injury. The fire crews were on the scene immediately to extinguish the small fires caused by friction. The flawless execution of the landing by Captain Wrona and his crew in what was considered one of the most challenging emergencies was a testament to their skill. The event was dubbed the Miracle in Warsaw, and Captain Wrona was hailed as a national hero. The Miracle on the Hudson. This is the legendary story of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an event that became a global symbol of heroism and professionalism in aviation. On January 15, 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320, was taking off from LaGuardia Airport in New York City. Captain Chesley "Sully" Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles were at the controls of the plane, which had 150 passengers and 5 crew members on board. It was a cold but clear winter day, and the flight was a routine trip to Charlotte, North Carolina. Just 90 seconds after takeoff, at an altitude of 2,800 feet, disaster struck. The aircraft flew directly into a flock of Canadian geese. The impact was so severe that it caused both engines to fail instantly. The cockpit was filled with the sounds of alarms and a sudden, eerie silence as the engines went dead. The plane was now a powerless glider descending rapidly over one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Captain Sully, a pilot with decades of experience, was faced with an impossible choice. He was too low to return to LaGuardia and didn't have enough altitude to make it to a nearby airport. With no other option, he made the split-second decision to perform an emergency water landing on the Hudson River. He guided the plane with remarkable precision, executing a near-perfect ditching on the frigid river. The impact was a jolt, but the Airbus A320 remained intact. Passengers and crew quickly and calmly evacuated onto the wings of the floating aircraft. Within minutes, ferries and rescue boats from all over the river converged on the scene. All 155 people on board were rescued, a feat that seemed impossible. The event was instantly hailed as the Miracle on the Hudson, a testament to the crew's skill, calmness, and decisive action under extreme pressure. We've seen how in the face of impossible odds, human skill and courage can turn disaster into a miracle. These incredible landings weren't just about technical expertise. They were about split-second decisions, teamwork, and an unshakable will to protect every life on board. They remind us that even when all seems lost, there's always a chance for a safe landing. If these stories left you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and join us for more incredible tales from the world of aviation. What's the most amazing aviation story you've ever heard? Let us know in the comments below.